Narelda Jacobs is a veteran of the Australian media landscape. She's been on our televisions for more than 2 decades and is regarded as one of our top journalists. Narelda.
That's very kind. Thanks.
You're also a queer woman.
Yes.
It's just part of your story.
Yes.
Go figure. Ooh. You've never hidden it?
No.
It doesn't seem like, and from my observing and seeing you at, you've been present at Mardi Gras events and certain things like that. Is that fair to say?
Well, yeah, most of my adult life I haven't hidden it. There was a point there that I didn't really know that I was. I couldn't. I didn't label it, and I wasn't true to my own feelings. And so it wasn't until I met other gay people came into my life that I realised, oh, you're not going to go to hell. You're actually nice people.
Well, maybe we are, and it's going to be a hell of a party down there.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's jump back.
Yeah.
You grew up in Perth, conservative Christian family.
Yep.
Multiple siblings.
Yes.
Going to church, all of those things. So what was your first knowledge or understanding of what being a lesbian or gay or queer might be?
Well, that it was living in sin, that it was living a life of sin, and that that you were going to go to hell, that gays were going to hell because they were living in sin. And some of my earliest memories was about that fire and brimstone kind of talk in our own home. And my dad was involved in Aboriginal politics and had a go at politics himself, and a very Christian household. We had Fred Nile to dinner once.
Wow.
So that just gives you an idea of what it was like growing up in my home. So my mum's name is Margaret. She looks a bit like Margaret Court. She's a pastor. She's exactly like Margaret Court. So that's what it was like growing up in my home.
And were you internally conflicted? Did you know otherwise? Michael Kirby's part of this series that's playing in this exhibit, and for him he just very clearly knew that it wasn't wrong.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what it was like for me too, I think. The conflict came with not telling my family. So from the time that I was about 19 or so from the time I was about 19, 20 to maybe 23 or so, I hadn't told my family. And that was what was the difficult part, because I had a toddler who was beginning to talk. And so my partner Marion was in her life, in Jade's life a lot, in my life a lot, obviously. And so having a toddler who's starting to talk, there's things that are said about Marion being, just to give you an example, my dad came over once and Jade was calling Marion babe. And so it was like that was getting pretty difficult to explain why is a 3-year-old calling Marion babe. So it's those sorts of things. So it was like I can't live a lie anymore.
So what age would you have been then?
I was about 20, early 20s.
And how did you come out? And what caused that? Obviously that was part of it, but...
It eats you up inside when you can't be your true, authentic self. And it... you have your chosen family and your friendship group and the people that you are yourself with, and you're exploring who you are with them and living very honestly with them. But then when you go to your family's house, like my parents' house, I'd be hiding that, and it eats you up inside. And so I didn't want to live like that anymore, and I didn't want to put my partner through that, Marion through that, who wasn't closeted. So I had to sit my mum down. And say, Marion's not my friend, she's my girlfriend, I'm a lesbian.
That was at the kitchen table?
It was in the formal it was in the formal lounge because it was an important conversation to have, so it was in a formal lounge. I think my mum and I sat there for about half an hour talking. She cried a lot, I probably cried as well, but I don't know, my tears were a bit different from hers. I think I was crying tears of relief because she said to me, you know, that she loved me and that I'd always be welcome at home. So, you know, that meant a lot because I knew that she would never be able to accept my sexuality. But we reached a point of tolerating it, which I know that's a big difference, and some people won't accept that. Won't accept people who tolerate their sexuality. There are a lot of people out there that do that, but I knew that, you know, I mean, imagine having Margaret Court for a mum. When they say, I love you and you'll always be welcome, then at that point, that was enough for me. And actually, it's still enough for me to have a relationship with my mum.
Generationally, and I'm not excusing people that just tolerate queer people, but generationally, when we grew up, tolerance was the best you could hope for many people. And, you know, when I was born, and I don't know about you, but when I was born, it was still illegal to be homosexual, basically, the act of sodomy. So tolerance was the best you could hope for.
Well, I wanted the love of my mum. So it was the difference between having that love or not having that love. And, you know, we're still quite close today, and it's set a bit of a standard because there are other issues within the family that Christianity has caused.
Right.
Other kind of rifts, I guess. But it's that it's the choice that you make. Do you want to have a relationship with someone or not? And what will you be willing to live with? You know, that. So, and I have been grappling with this for so long because I tell people, you know, the standard that they should live in and not preach hate and all these things, and yet some of that is coming from my own mother. But I love my mum, so it's a really tricky situation to be in.
Life is complicated.
Yes.
Nothing is black or white.
Yeah.
There's shades of grey everywhere. You said eats you up inside, and I think that only certain people can know that, and those are the people that have had to keep it inside. I know exactly what that pain, it's a pain. What was that like for you?
I think it was compounded by the fact that I did have a child. I was bringing a child into the world, and I wanted her to be very open-minded, not like we were when we were growing up. And I wanted her to see the world for all the beautiful colours and the shapes that it is, rather than be judgmental about people who don't fit the mould of the thing that is a perfect person. So that was my motivation, really, as well as just being able to live with myself, my authentic self.
And the relief?
It is such a relief. It is the moment that you do that the moment you do something like that is the moment you no longer need parental approval. And that feeling is freedom.
What's your relationship with your mum, Margaret, like now?
It's great. It's really great. I mean, I don't come asking her for relationship advice, even though she probably would give it. My partner, Karina, is very much welcomed into her home. You know, there's always a place set at the table. If I was, you know, Karina and I were to come, there'd be a place set for the both of us. She's very welcoming, and she comes at you with love. So it's bizarre that that we just have this understanding that, you know, you can have your beliefs and I'll have my, you know, values in life, and we won't kind of overstep each other's boundaries.
Religion is a common theme throughout all of these conversations that we've been having with people. That's just an observation more than a question, but it is a common theme, and there's a lot of conflict there.
Yeah, I wish there would have been queer churches when I was young, and queer pastors, you know, that I could look up to, and to know that it was okay. That would have made all the difference. But if there were queer figures in the church, and even when I was, you know, coming into late teens and early adulthood, when there were queer figures that were emerging in the church, it was very much known that, there was a look of disgust on my parents' face. So there was not even look, there's one. It must be okay. It was like, oh no, that's not okay. You know, it was very quickly dismissed.
being in the public eye, reading the news, talking on TV, being a journalist, you're sort of taught in the early days, and I know that it's different in the sort of work depending on the job that you're doing or the seat you're sitting in, but in general we're told you don't give that side of yourself, but you haven't ever hidden it from your public life either. Was there a point where you had to come out in your public life?
Yeah, so I was a journo on the road in Perth, Channel 10, where I've worked ever since the year 2000. I've been a journo. Yeah, yes, 24 years. Thank you for reminding me. So I was a journo for 8 years before that, when I began my career at Channel 10, and then I became the newsreader in 2008. So journos, people aren't as, I guess there's a different relationship that people have with a newsreader, the person who anchors, than a reporter as such. So I wanted to start the job and just, this is me, this is all of me, this is who I am. And a journo approached to do a feature story on me for the weekend paper in Perth. And of course, she knew I was queer because everyone did. Like I didn't hide it, except from probably a broader audience who wouldn't know. And so she wanted to tell my coming out story. So it had to go through so many sets of eyes at the network, and it went to the highest echelons at 10 for there to be approval that yes, I would come out in the Sunday paper. My parents didn't know I was going to come out in the Sunday paper, although at that point they had known for about 8 years or so. And so the journo had interviewed my mum and dad for the story, and they expressed how proud they were of me and all of those sorts of things. And then the paper comes out on the Sunday and there was crickets from all of my family. No one phoned to say, great photo or great article, nothing. And so then it was like, oh, okay, this is awkward. This is really awkward. And yeah, I phoned my mum that night and she said, oh, Lovey, oh, how could you do that to us?
Oh.
Yeah, so it was bringing shame upon the family.
Shame.
Yeah.
But did you feel anything from the viewers or people on the street? I was in Perth a few weekends ago. People seemed pretty chill there.
It was great. People were coming up to me left, right and centre, like, thank you.
Right.
Yeah, people were really, really related hard to it and said that it opened up conversations with their own families. And, their own parents were reading the Sunday paper and saying, oh, look at this, or children were bringing it up with their families or casually just leaving it open at the kitchen table in their own family homes and sparked conversation. So the reaction was overwhelming. The thing that my mum struggled with was she said to me, people aren't going to watch the news. She thought it was going to impact the viewership because it was it's quite a popular bulletin that had
and traditionally
a big audience.
You have heterosexual white men and women reading the news all around the world in general. Would you say? Yes.
So then there's an Aboriginal queer woman reading the news.
I'm not just gonna push the door open. I'm gonna kick it open.
In fact, the headline of it was a cover photo as well, actually, in the Sunday paper, and the headline was Minority Report.
We're queer. We're here. Get used to it. Don't fuck with us.
Yes.
Love that. Have you ever felt, having been in this industry for 700 years, I don't want to put you in a position that's difficult, but have you ever felt like you couldn't be your authentic self as a woman on television that's Aboriginal, that's queer or lesbian? You describe yourself as identified as a lesbian?
Well, when I'm reading the news, you read AutoCue, and nothing quite hit exactly like the marriage equality debate that we were having. And so it was then that you realised there's something not quite right here. As a network, we supported marriage equality, so that was a huge difference. But to sit back and see what was being said in the media about queer people, it was really awful. So that hit differently.
And as a newsreader, you're supposed to be impartial, right?
Yes.
So you're just giving the news. You can't come off and go, oh, Trump, he's a dickhead. Like,
You're reading the words.
Yeah.
Yes. You're reading the words that people are trusting to be true and accurate and correct.
Wow. This space that we're in, the old Darlinghurst Jail police station, is significant for a number of reasons. But when the original 78ers marched down Oxford Street, many of them were arrested and taken back here to this space. So it's a site of pain. It's a site of reclaiming this space as well. How does that sit with you? Because a lot of people are like, oh, that's a bit controversial, whatever. But it's kind of like, let's go there. And for a lot of people that have been part of this project.
There's such a lot of healing that has to take place in order to do things like that. And as a queer community, we are so ready to reclaim words that have been used against us, and now we're reclaiming a space that's been used against us and really used to hurt us, not just used against us, but to hurt us and to kill us and to arrest us. And there's such a lot of healing that has to happen in order for that to be successful and to be done in a way that we can all move forward. And it begins with apologies. And we do hear apologies from the police in various states. We hear apologies from prime ministers of things that have been done in the past that have been very wrong. So it begins with an apology, which also needs to be accepted, and sage needs to be burned.
Yeah, a lot of sage.
There needs to be a smoking in that building to begin with. Yeah, the healing smoke needs to go through there.
You're a Wadjuk Noongar woman. I hope that pronunciation was close to correct. One of the early things and one of the discussions I had covering the fact that this site was becoming Qtopia Sydney was that it needed to represent all of queer culture in Australia, all of queer Australia. Therefore, it's not just one slice of it. So it's not just the HIV/AIDS epidemic. It's not just the 78ers. And there's a very big move to ensure that the thousands and thousands and thousands of years of First Nations history is told as part of this story. Part of the story. I mean, I'm sure you could do this is a broader conversation, but as a First Nations woman, can you explain or discuss queer culture within that space? And I'm saying that in a very general question, knowing that there's hundreds of countries within this land that we're sitting.
Black people have been excluded from queer culture. Oxford Street has been an unsafe space for people of diversity to visit. And even I moved to Sydney in January 2020, and I've had a couple of instances where I haven't been allowed to enter a licensed venue because I'm black. Yes.
Really?
Yes. Yes. So Oxford Street has been an unsafe space for people of colour.
Well, it
is shocking to hear. World Pride did an extraordinary job of bringing the diversity and making it safe again and starting to make it safe again. An extraordinary job with incredible leadership. In fact, I took an example to Kate Wickett, and because I didn't want to go public with it because I wanted it to be an opportunity to change. So I met with at the office of World Pride, the CEO of Kate Wickett, and she met with the licensees and got a resolution and a commitment that they would improve their security and be more inclusive. So
I'm not easily shocked, but I am
Yes, it happens.
Sure.
The excuse that we were given was that this venue was at capacity, but it was clearly not. And as soon as I don't know, it's difficult. It's really difficult to hear, and it's difficult for me to bring up again because it was quite a traumatic experience. But when plainclothes police came because they were called, because of course we didn't want to step aside easily because we could see exactly what was happening. When the plainclothes police came and we stepped out of the line, all the white people behind us went straight in. So it wasn't at capacity, and we weren't over the limit. And there was no other reason given.
Wow.
Yeah. So when we talk about, people of colour, people of diverse backgrounds being welcomed into queer culture, that's one place at the door of licensed venues that we experience racism, and it's the intersection of our blackness and our queerness that it happens, and it's heartbreaking.
Like I said, I'm not shocked very often, and you've genuinely shocked me. Okay, so what do? You spoke to the CEO of World Pride, and
you have to relive your trauma in order for there to be change. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Sorry, I really am genuinely shocked.
Yeah.
Did you worry? The thing is, you've got a voice. You're a strong woman, standing up and saying, "Hey, this is not okay," and saying, "Hang on, the plainclothes police need to come on board here." Others would have gone, "Hang on, no, I don't want to fuss because they don't want to be in the paper. They don't want to be on the whatever." Where did you find that strength?
Well, we're not easily moved, and we knew what was happening to us was wrong.
Right.
And we didn't want it to happen to other people, because if it happened to us, then I just, everything that you do, all the advocacy that you do for your community, you do it for people who are coming out for the first time, who are hitting Oxford Street for the first time, thinking what a great time this is going to be, enjoying the night with their friends, and thinking this is my community who's going to welcome me with open arms. And then I didn't want what happened to us to happen to them. So that's where you find the strength to do it.
Do you know much about, and I sound ignorant, happy to learn, First Nations culture dating back, relating to queer culture? Generally, knowing that it's a generalisation.
It's difficult to find. But one example and one clue about queerness in my own Noongar culture is in a word. There is a word, baal, B-A-A-L, baal, and it means they, them. It's a non-gendered word. Baal's over there. That belongs to Baal.
Wow.
So there's a non-binary word in Noongar language.
Wow. No.
So that's how we know. That's a gift from the ancestors, that word has been passed down, and that's not been that's still in use. So we use Baal a lot.
Are there any other examples culturally that you know? I mean,
I don't know of any from home.
It'd be nice to explore that more.
It would be beautiful, and it's an area of research that needs to happen. I'd love for there to be. I'd love to learn more actual examples of where queerness has been accepted in First Nations culture.
Do you speak much language?
Just a few words here and there, but no, not fluently.
I only know a few naughty words in different languages, but thank you for sharing that story, being so raw and honest with us. You mentioned marriage equality. For me personally, when marriage equality happened, my whole mind shifted. I went from being a guy that marriage was never an option for. It's just a piece of paper, I don't care, because that was easier for me to say that than to go, actually, that hurts. To, okay, maybe it's just a piece of paper, but I'm equal now. And I felt equal. So then during World Pride last year, there was some pain going on around Sydney. There was some pain going around Australia. There's a lot of hate going on towards people with rainbows and all of that sort of stuff. God knows how a rainbow can be hurtful to people. But I knew that I was safe within the fact that
Yes.
I was equal.
Oh, wasn't it great at marriage equality? After
Marriage equality, but then in 2023,
yeah.
at World Pride,
Oh, my
when
goodness, it was
I got
great.
off at my train station and there were people calling us faggots. And I'm big enough and ugly enough to look after myself, but some of the younger people, there was on our local Facebook group, someone said that there was a young girl who had rainbow face paint on, and they said that someone yelled out to her that she should have acid poured on her face. You know, like,
It's awful.
I feel strong. I feel
awful.
I'm able to be visible.
Yes.
But, you know, these young people, that's really shit in 2023, you
It
know,
is.
and we've been fighting this fight for a long time. But I feel like I can sit comfortably knowing that whatever they say, sticks and stones, the law says I'm equal.
I was at the launch of World Pride last year, and Courtney Act said it so beautifully when she said, "I'd hate to be homophobic in Sydney right now." So that's where that was coming from, because it would have been difficult for a homophobe to live with than a transphobe to live with all the progress flags. It was just everywhere. It felt so good.
I see rainbow flags as representing everyone because they're just lovely.
Yes.
Gay, straight, bi, trans, everything.
Well, that's it. You know, when you get it right for queer people, you get it right for everyone. Like when you put First Nations people first, everyone benefits. When you at all the intersections, when you put First Nations trans first, everyone benefits. You know, that's what people don't realise. When we strive to achieve something for us, we're not doing it in isolation. Everyone benefits.
You're not
the benefits
less than.
flow on. No, and we're not taking anything away from you.
Yeah.
We're adding.
You're not less than because someone else is celebrated.
Yes, that's right.
Narelda Jacobs, thank you for joining us. You're an amazing woman. Thank you for being vocal. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being part of this.
Thank you. I love my community so much.